What is up, guys? Frosty 0232 here today for another Frosty Features. We have another member of the Secret Defenders to talk about. I'm a little bit behind, but we are going to catch up as quick as possible. But today, it is Miss Mar-Vell Hardlight. So, in the past, I haven't been able to do actually a Miss Mar-Vell feature, so this is going to be mainly Miss Mar-Vell, but I'm going to bring in the stuff. Hardlight is based on the MCU Miss Mar-Vell, but the comics have caught up, and there's actually a lot of story that kind of relates to the Hardlight kind of story from the comics, so we're going to talk about that. So this is actually Miss Mar-Vell Hardlight and not just a true Miss Mar-Vell, so buckle in. If you haven't seen a Frosty Features, what this is a comic book background on the toons that you use in Mar-Vell Strike Force. Let's dive in. According to Scopely, Miss Mar-Vell Hardlight, Kamala Khan was just an average New Jersey teenager when she received a gift in the mail from her grandmother, a bangle. After wearing the bangle, Kamala's dormant mutant gene activated, granting her superhuman powers. She's able to manipulate extra-dimensional energy from the Nor dimension and gives her superhuman abilities and can be used to both create physical Hardlight platforms and stretch her physical body. With her newfound abilities, Kamala adopted the name of Miss Mar-Vell and began her journey as a superhero. Well, that's not even, this isn't even, upon further reading into this, and we judge these at the end, but I do want to point out, the Hardlight one that they are copying from cannot stretch her body as far as the show is currently concerned. So that's kind of an interesting, thing to say in here, but I'm sure it was just for ease of animation, I guess, for them. I don't know, but we will talk about it. So yeah, MCU doesn't stretch her body. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen the show, or Mar-Vell's coming out soon. All right, Miss Mar-Vell, name Kamala Khan. First appearance is Captain Mar-Vell Volume 7, number 14 in 2013. She appeared, I believe, 2 to 3 times without a name. She's a background character. She's in a group of people that Captain Mar-Vell saves, and then I think that's in 14. Yeah, so she's just sort of there. There's also a point where you see her putting up a poster of Captain Mar-Vell in her room, which is kind of cool. There also was a full cover of her wearing this suit, her Miss Mar-Vell uniform. There was a full cover of her for a Captain Mar-Vell book before Kamala was actually introduced as Miss Mar-Vell. So kind of a neat thing there. But yeah, so you see her before she turns into Miss Mar-Vell, before she gets her powers, and then when we are introduced to her actually starting, it's her more or less origin story. Powers and ability: morphogenetics, healing factor, and bioluminescence. Morphogenetics, her powers are on face value as far as looking at Miss Mar-Vell, right? Because right now we're talking about Miss Mar-Vell in the comics, right? We're not talking about MCU, we're talking about comics. 616, here we are. Miss Mar-Vell, at face value, she has the powers of Reed Richards' Fantastic Four. That's what it looks like, but that's not actually the situation, right? So whereas Reed can actually stretch his body, Miss Mar-Vell's powers has something to do with time travel, so it's like where her molecules will be, and so in her stretching, it's essentially her molecules time traveling and kind of creating that stretch. So she has more advantages and less advantages to Reed. There's a fine line there. But she uses her embiggen, which is her kind of growing big. She has a limit that she can go up to, and yes, so this also, the morphogenics also gives her the ability to actually do things like Mystique, where she can fully transform into other people. One of the stories I would talk about today, one of the notable events, she does that, and it turns into a big deal. But yeah, she can fully pull a Mystique, change clothes, etc. She has a healing factor, but not quite Wolverine style. Ultimately, she can focus, and it uses a lot of her, it essentially uses all of her energy to heal herself, and it makes her like ravenous, or maybe she'll even pass out due to the healing. And also she has a form of bioluminescence, so when she's using her morphogenics powers or whatever, typically she begins to glow, which is quite unlike Reed. We're also going to talk about something a little bit later, but ultimately she has another power this comes into the more hard light situation. She has another power that has not been revealed in comics as of the recording date of this video. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Aliases. Captain Mar-Vell in Sloth Baby. She impersonates Captain Mar-Vell at a few points, and subconsciously she wants to be Captain Mar-Vell, and when she finds out she can actually transform into other people, she finds out by accidentally revealing to herself that she is dressed as Captain Mar-Vell. Sloth Baby is actually, it's an alias, but it's not a superhero alias. That is her online name for the fan fiction she writes about different superheroes. One of the fun things about Miss Mar-Vell is that she is a super fan of superheroes, especially Captain Mar-Vell, but she has a whole, she writes romantic fiction and things. She ships certain characters together, most notably Spider-Man and Captain Mar-Vell. Affiliations. Miss Mar-Vell is affiliated all the time, constantly. So affiliations being the Champions, Young Avengers, Inhumans, and X-Men. So Young Avengers obviously is really big. The main Miss Mar-Vell version that we have in Marvel Strike Force is with the Young Avengers. The new one being with the Secret Defenders. Miss Mar-Vell Hardlight. There's no actual affiliation in the comics there, but what we're going to mainly focus on today instead of Young Avengers is, because we're kind of focusing on Hardlight, is Inhumans and X-Men, right? The closest parallels we can pull from the comic books is this Miss Mar-Vell that kind of focuses in the Inhumans and X-Men, so it's a little bit later. Who died? No one at first. Usually, to be a superhero, supervillain, somebody has to die, and that kind of creates the motivation for them to be a hero. Kamala, being a super fan, automatically getting powers, made her absolutely motivated enough to become this hero. So, that is that. But so no one dies at first. So when we get to the point where I assume we're going to see this hard light situation maybe show up in the comics or whatever, Kamala actually dies. So, if we would be having this conversation a few months ago, no one would have ever died in her story, exactly, to make her be who she is. But now, for her to kind of come out this other side as a mutant, right? She did. She had to die to become this mutant, because Miss Mar-Vell was not a mutant forever, right? She was an Inhuman. We get to the MCU bringing her in as a mutant, and then now, like currently going on in the comics, we find that this is going on. Background: she's a New Jerseyite. She is a Muslim American. She is practicing Muslim, and also she is the first practicing Muslim character with their own titled book as far as superheroes go. So the very first Muslim superhero with their own title in comics, which is super cool. And also, as a reminder, like, this is 2014 when she gets her first title, if I remember, 2013, 2014, when she first gets her first title, so keep that in mind. So she is, as we stand in the comics right now, she is an Inhuman/mutant hybrid, right? So, for those of you following Frosty Features, for those of you who have read comics, or you used to read comics, that is not a combination that happens pretty much ever, right? To my knowledge, there are 2 living Inhuman mutant crossovers, and I talked about one of them in Frosty Features Quicksilver. Miss Mar-Vell being the first more or less successful one that is kind of, they're exploring that as we speak, right? So, and we'll talk about that more in a bit, but weaknesses. So, Miss Mar-Vell has some weaknesses. Once again, it's very easy to compare her to Reed Richards, very easy to compare her to Mystique. She mainly uses the Reed style powers, but her weaknesses are a little bit more varied than they are for a Reed Richards or a Mystique, but it's probably because she's a little bit more of a puzzle piece character. She can kind of fit into anywhere. So her weaknesses look like her weaknesses start with electromagnetic pulses. It kind of stuns her. When she heals, so once again, not like Wolverine, when she heals, she uses a lot of her energy. She can pass out. If she has to heal in the middle of a fight, she pretty much becomes useless directly after. And then she is a quantum hijacking. So characters that have the ability to affect things on a quantum level. You know, maybe a lot of your Pimtech style characters, because her stretching, her powers work in a time traveling kind of sense. Somebody can actually kind of step in the middle of that and use her. If they can manipulate quantum situations, they can actually reverse her powers and use them for themselves, things like that. So it's very, very bad. And also I wanted to point out her gear. So with Fantastic Four, Reed Richards develops all their suits so that it kind of adapts to their powers. In this situation, we have her friend Bruno who creates her suit, and then and you can't see it on this in this clip that I've got here of Miss Mar-Vell, but she actually does have a bangle in the comics. So one of the things, so first off, Bruno creates essentially a suit that has a polymer. So, and this polymer kind of makes it's almost like, it's like squishy kind of stuff that's like he has infused in the suit, so that when she changes, she can change the suit, but she doesn't have to concentrate as much to change the suit, because this polymer makes it easier for the suit to change with her. So it makes it a little bit easier for her to use her powers. So it'll stretch with her, etc. But another weakness that comes from that suit is that polymer can get washed off with water. So her clothes can start to degrade very quickly or not change as easily in the event that they become wet, which is, you know, not great. And then also she has on her left arm, she has a bangle. So with Miss Mar-Vell Hardlight, this is the catalyst, very similar to like Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. It's a catalyst for the powers to work. So in the MCU with Miss Mar-Vell Hardlight, this bangle essentially unlocks her mutant gene, which isn't really how any mutant genes work to my knowledge, but I guess, you know, whatever, it's fine. It's, you know, it's comics, it's not true science, right? So anyway, but she does have a bangle, and Bruno has altered the bangle so she essentially uses it as a pocket. So she keeps her cell phone, money, stuff like that in there. And she also, in the comics, she still got that, just like in the MCU, she got this bangle from her grandmother, and which her great grandmother wore to smuggle money during partition, right? So partition's a really big part of the Miss Mar-Vell Hardlight, the MCU Miss Mar-Vell. It's a big part of the story, so definitely check out the show. It was still used in partition. It was still used by her great grandmother. It just doesn't unlock her powers. It's just a nice keepsake that ties her to her family. A big part of Miss Mar-Vell is her operating with her family. She's not, she has to work around that, and also her working around her religion and trying to like kind of keep it up. It's very focused on that, and it's handled very well, in my opinion. Relationships. Aisha, this is her it's Aisha, is her great grandmother. This is the one with the bangle who used to use it to smuggle cash in the MCU. She also sort of has this kind of mutant gene situation going on. Yusuf and Muniba Khan are her parents. Probably got that wrong. I apologize. Amir Khan is her brother, also featured heavily in the show. And then Bruno Carielli and Nakia Bahadir are her best friends. Also shown up in the show quite a bit. They meet in grade school, and they kind of essentially they gravitate towards each other, and they become this little trifecta of best friends, ever or whatever, and they're always around. So Bruno and Nakia show up quite often in the comics. Bruno actually eventually moves to Wakanda. He's, you can't have a superhero story without there being some genius dude that makes things, so he ends up moving to Wakanda due to that. But yeah, so and also in the MCU, it's a little spoiler alert, there's sort of this like kind of blooming love interest thing. That is not a thing in the comics. They are just friends. Notable events. Becoming Miss Mar-Vell. So, Kamala being a super fan of superheroes, she is saved by Captain Mar-Vell. But she's also this, nerdy, kind of repressed teenager, and she's kind of bullied at school. Hey, this also happens in the MCU. You gotta get out. You're a shut-in, you're a nerd, you can't do anything, whatever. So Kamala one night decides, hey, all these people are making fun of me because I can't go to this party. I'm going to sneak out. I'm going to go to this party. And so it's like the one bad thing Kamala ever decides to do. And she sneaks out and she goes to the party and she's like, I'm going to be one of the cool kids. It's going to be so cool. And she gets there and the bullies are like, yeah, you're here, but you're still a nerd. You're still a dork. You know, you don't have friends. You don't wear the right clothes. Like, get out of here, you loser. And she's like, I disobeyed my parents for this. What the heck? I'm gonna go home. So she starts walking home and she's, you know, on her fun little way. But then all of a sudden, all of New Jersey is covered with Terrigen mists. And anybody outside gets hit by them. And Terrigen mists essentially are the thing that awaken a inhuman gene. But the Terrigen mists are heavily guarded by the Inhumans typically. I had a very long conversation about Terrigen mists in Frosty Features Quicksilver, so definitely check it out. But in short, they're very guarded because getting powers from them is not assured. Usually it turns you into a monster or kills you. Or there's a lot of different levels. If you are a mutant, you die. That's why there are no mutant/inhuman hybrids almost at all in the Marvel universe, is because, and that this is a big thing when you have the arc like Inhumans versus X-Men, because these Terrigen mists typically just kill mutants. Anyway, Miss Mar-Vell at the time being just a human, so originally she was meant to be a mutant, but she was written as an Inhuman because at the time, the editorial team was trying to push new Inhuman characters like Moon Girl and Quake, I believe. And so they wanted Miss Mar-Vell to be able to relate more to them, so they chose for her to be an Inhuman. So she passes out, and when you go through Terrigenesis, which is from the mist, you get put into a cocoon more often than not. So while she's in her cocoon, she has a vision. And Captain America, Iron Man, and Captain Marvel appear before her, in her head, the three greatest heroes of all time, and they're kind of like, hey, we're disappointed in you, like, why would you disobey your parents? You know better than that. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I just thought it was gonna be a cool thing, but I guess it wasn't, like, I don't know what to do. And then Captain Marvel comes forward and is like, what do you want to do with your life? Like, what is your goal? What is your big thing that you want to achieve? And she's like, I want to be you. And then, you know, whoop, boom, I gotta wake up time. And she wakes up and she sees herself like in a reflection, and this is the kind of what you see right there. She wakes up from the street, breaks out of her cocoon, and she sees that she is now Miss Mar-Vell. She is Carol Danvers, Miss Mar-Vell. She looks just like her, and this is how she kind of finds out that she has these powers, because soon she like goes back towards the party or whatever, and her friends are in jeopardy, or her friends, the people that bullied her, are in jeopardy. And then she finds out that she can expand and save people, and so she saves the day, saves the school bullies, and then she's like, oh, I'm super, wow. And then she figures out, oh, I can actually change back into myself. This is really cool. I gotta figure this stuff out. Goes home, grabs a swimsuit and a domino mask, puts it on, and that's how she first gets her powers. And then she decides that she's going to act as Miss Mar-Vell, and she goes, so Bruno starts working at this gas station called Circle Q, and she goes, and Circle Q's being robbed, and she goes to try to stop the robbery, and she gets shot. And she's like, oh damn, I'm shot now, I'm gonna die. And then she realizes, she focuses, and when she focuses, she's able to heal herself, and she's like, whoa, I can heal myself. But in this process, she is able to stop the robbery, and she heals herself, but inadvertently reveals her identity to Bruno, who then is like, hey, I was putting this polymer suit together for a scholarship to college, but it looks like maybe you could use it. And he makes her his suit, and then she ends up donning the name, since Carol Danvers at this time is Captain Marvel, and that's sort of her big inspiration. She decides to don the name of Miss Mar-Vell from that point on. So that's sort of your intro to actually who Miss Mar-Vell is, as far as Kamala Khan's concerned, in Marvel becoming a mutant. Here is the big discussion, the big thing going on right now with Miss Mar-Vell in the comics. The show came out, and then they're like, yeah, Miss Mar-Vell, you're dead now. So she dies. But in the comics, one of the big things that started going on as soon as like Krakoa and things became the big kind of central story arc of the X-Men is that death does not count for mutants for the most part. They have a way to bring people back to life. So there's a situation where there's a bad guy, there's a supervillain, if you will, named Emissary, and Emissary is he is essentially a kind of a zealot for these Mayan gods. So pretty much when he shows up, his goal is, hey, I'm going to find some certain people that I decided needed to be sacrificed, and I'm going to sacrifice them so that I can get great power. So he does things like teleport, various crazy different types of attacks and things he can do. And his brother is he actually dates MJ for a while, Mary Jane Watson in the Spider-Man situations. So Emissary shows up and he's like, you know what time it is? Kill MJ time. So he's trying to kill MJ, and so therefore that who that makes you fight. Obviously, if you're going to try to kill Mary Jane Watson, you're obviously going to run into Miss Mar-Vell. So she steps in, and obviously it's Spider-Man. Spider-Man is there trying to... It's Miss Mar-Vell teaming up with Spider-Man, and they're trying to stop the Emissary and save Mary Jane. And so Miss Mar-Vell's like, I've got an idea. He's trying to find Miss Mar-Vell. I will transform into her, and he will come after me instead of Mary Jane, and I can distract him and take him over, and then you can take him out, Spidey. And Spidey's like, that's a great idea. Let's do that. So then she's like, I'm Mary Jane Watson. And then Emissary looks at her, you're Mary Jane Watson. And she's like, yeah, better come catch me. Ha 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 ha. Wasn't 100% aware of the teleportation, however, of Emissary's power set. And Emissary just, teleports beside her and stabs her immediately. There's just nice, real good kill, ceremonial dagger, stabs her, which, all to say, Peter's freaking out, MJ's freaking out, and Kamala's dying. So she loses her power. She turns back into Kamala and Miss Mar-Vell, and Emissary's like, oh dang, that's not who I was supposed to stab. And then we have the I want to make sure I get this right, the evil spirit, where is it? The Wayeb. Okay, yeah. So there's a Mayan evil spirit. It's like essentially very similar to a Loki as in the Norse mythology. Loki, god of mischief, spirit of mischief. This real jacked, scary being comes out of nowhere and is like, hey, that's not who you were supposed to sacrifice. I'm gonna kill you. And so the spirit takes out Emissary. He's not a problem anymore. And Spider-Man rushes to Kamala's side. And Kamala is dying, and she looks at him and she's like, my name's Kamala Khan. Like, I'm sorry. And she dies in Spider-Man's arms. Everybody cries. That's the situation. And then her family's informed, she's gone, whatever. And then lo and behold, she ends up waking up on Krakoa, and she is reborn. And she's like, oh my gosh, like, how did you bring me back to life? I'm not a mutant. And Professor X is like, yes you are. And she's like, what? And they're like, you are a mutant inhuman hybrid. You have so I talked about earlier, it is revealed that there is a power she doesn't have. So due to her, it has something to do to her dual genetics, but she gets mutant powers and she gets inhuman powers. She uses her inhuman powers, her Embiggen, her bioluminescence, etc. That is what is attributed to her inhuman powers. But Professor X reveals that once her mutant gene actually kicks in, she will have another power. But to my knowledge of this reading date, and I don't think in comics as of this date, I don't think it's been revealed what that mutant power is. Also, I brought it up in Frosty Features Quicksilver. I'll put it as a link to this because it does kind of deal directly with this. The other inhuman mutant hybrid that exists but has never been looked into is Luna Maximoff, who I talk about quite a bit in that feature. So definitely check out that feature. Luna Maximoff being the child of Quicksilver and Crystal of the Inhumans. But so right now they're kind of riding that Inhuman mutant, like, oh wow, it can exist storyline with Kamala right now. She also has a cool new X-Men uniform that does the same thing as her previous one, and she's currently running with the X-Men as we speak. So all that to say, with Miss Marvel Hardlight and Kamala being a mutant, originally she was supposed to be a mutant. They picked Inhumans, and now she's both. So there it is. There you have it. Marvel Strike Force doesn't care about power level, but here on Frosty Features, we do. Now, the way this works, if you are a multiversal power level, you have the ability to not only end your reality, but all of reality as it stands, the multiverse, as it were. If you are a universal threat, that means you have the power to end your reality, maybe hop over to another reality and end that one by one. Cosmic means you are a threat on a planetary scale, which means you can take out planetary bodies, planets, etc., and maybe with enough time and effort, you could take out something like a solar system or a small galaxy. Nuclear means you have the power equal to that of a nuclear bomb, which means you could level things like small cities all the way up to a single planetary body with work. Super Soldier means that you are beyond all capabilities of humans. You are able to level something like a brick wall up to a city block with enough time and effort, etc. City level means that you may be at a human level, but you are trained to the very peak, tippity top of the scale. This is where we find a lot of our secret agents, our spies, our mercenaries, etc. in the Marvel Universe. And then there's Greg. Greg is the undead Asgardian that Hela spawns in Marvel Strike Force, and due to undead Asgardian physiology, and just because his name is Greg, I've decided that we're going to put Greg at a regular human level. So theoretically, I, as a man armed with random tote bags full of groceries and a lot of anger from some road rage, I theoretically, appropriately armed, could theoretically take out Greg for the sake of argument, etc. All the excuses. So, in the case of Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, Hardlight, it's really tough. I had a really tough time thinking about this, and I'm going off of the comic books, but even the MCU is kind of similar, but I think her best classification as of recording date, I got a feeling when this mutant power manifests, it may change some things, but I'm thinking right now, as of this recording date, we are looking at Kamala Khan being at the super soldier level, but at the utmost highest end, for the fact her embiggen has a limit, so she can level something like a building because of her embiggen, right? So, but it has a limit, and even with the light powers from the MCU, she could theoretically still take out something like a building or more than one building. But outside of that, unless she gets ramped up heavily by something, I don't believe she has the power to actually take out something like a universe or a full city. But I do feel like she has the potential, especially with this new X power that might be coming out, and also as the Hardlight situation is explored more in the MCU, it may increase. Because I mean there was a bit of a dimension hopping situation, but it wasn't like a rip apart not from her. She has that influence, but not from her, where she could just rip apart space-time and things like that. But because of also the nature of her powers being some sort of time traveling situation, it having some sort of quantum effect, I do think that it could become a thing later. She has the potential to go all the way up to cosmic. Maybe even universal, depending on how they want to play it. So right now, it's very fun on her scale. So I guess what we're looking at today, and this is definitely the first time we've had something like this on Frosty Features, but she, so far as evidenced in the comics, I say super soldier, but she has the potential to go all the way up the scale. We'll have to just see how it plays out, and I'm very excited to see it moving forward. And according to Scopely, they got it twisted. So typically, when we do the MCU ones, I put comic book cop out. In this situation, they went for the comic book cop out and went for the MCU. But when it says that she stretches, she doesn't stretch in the MCU. So this Miss Marvel Hardlight, modeled after the person in the MCU, and all the story except for the stretching comes from the MCU. But they threw the stretching in there because that's all the other Miss Marvel stuff. Therefore, we're twisting comics and the MCU once again. Even though we're going off an MCU character, it's not right. it is, but then it isn't. All of a sudden, one word really puts it off. So Scopely got it twisted. She's a fun character to play. She's very viable. Like definitely worth the build. Secret Defenders is the thing right now, so that's amazing. So yeah, and that is Miss Mar-Vell Hard Lights Frosty feature. I hope that you all had a good time. I hope that I got everything right. If I missed something, or you want to I would love to know what your favorite Miss Mar-Vell moments are. Please let me know in the comments. Please like, share, and subscribe. It helps out the channel a lot, and it only costs you a couple of clicks. As a reminder, I stream at the link above on Twitch on Sundays at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, where we do Frosty features live. I hope that you all had a fantastic time. I hope that you all have a fantastic weekend. Most importantly, all, stay cool.